Hello and welcome. This is Jeanette Casella, founder and president of the International Association of Professional Life Coaches. And today we have our masterclass, Marketing with Media for Greater Visibility, with Dr. Gayle Carson. And Dr. Gayle Carson is the host of 12 radio shows and the founder of SOBradionetwork.com. And just as an aside, the SOB stands for Spunky Old Broad. As a former TV spokesman for Clairol and a frequent guest on many talk shows, she knows what it takes to be a great guest and one who is asked back. Her Women in Business show is #1 on the network, and Living Regret-Free, her second show, is #3. Gayle studied broadcasting and theater in college and has been a part of this world for many years. She's also an advisor and coach to leading entrepreneurs and is the only woman in the world who has a doctorate, is a certified speaking professional, a certified management consultant, and a fellow in the Institute of Management Consultants. So welcome, Gayle.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeanette. It is an honor to be here, and I am so excited about this subject because I love it.
Yes, I can tell that you're passionate about it. So, why don't you take it away?
Okay, well, for all of you who have tuned in, I really appreciate it because I think this will be very beneficial for you, and I think it will really promote your career and propel you a little bit faster because you have no idea what getting on and in the media really does for you. So here's what you're going to learn a little bit about today. What a TV and a radio podcast exposure can mean for you and how to prepare and pitch your interview, because it's not only getting on the show that it's important too what you do in terms of how you pitch what you have to say, or you're not really going to get your message across. And then, of course, what you do during your interview as well, because all of those things are so critical to whether you're going to ever be asked back again. So here I am doing an interview. This is live on TV. And what would it mean for you and your business? And those are just some of the highlights of where I've been interviewed, both in print and on TV. And you see me doing my radio show. And interestingly enough, this has been a journey for many, many years. I started out in TV. Well, actually, I started out in radio. I had a radio show while I was still in college. I had 3 of them, as a matter of fact. Then I got sidetracked with the different businesses that I opened and so forth. Then I did, of course, that TV spokesperson job for Clairol. And then I started back on radio about 10 years ago. And I started with Entrepreneur Magazine, and they asked me to do a women in business show. And then from there, all these other things have happened for me. So one of the things that we talk about is what is your subject going to be? And you have to have an interesting topic. And remember, what you think is interesting is not what the public thinks is interesting. So some of the things that you can do is write and promote your book. It always helps if you're going to be on TV or if you're going to be on a radio show to have a book that you can promote. I've written 5 books. This is one of them. The How to Be an SOB, a spunky old broad who kicks butt. And then communicating your expertise. You are there because you are an expert. And I know many of you might get nervous about doing a radio show, and especially on TV with the cameras and the directors and the control room and all of that. But you are the expert. So when you get on, people are looking to you for an answer. And that's hopefully why you're there. You're giving an answer. And so you are the voice. And you've got to sound authoritative. You've got to sound like you know what you're doing. I was just at a board meeting this morning, and we had a speaker there. She was a professor from the university, but she was so weak, and all her mannerisms and the way she moved around the floor was very weak, and it just did not amplify her message. So it's very key how you get across what you have to say and the voice with which you say it. And then, of course, you could also be doing this for a cause. Many people want to get on television or radio because they're promoting a charity, or they're promoting a race, or they're promoting a particular fundraiser. It doesn't have to be a business reason. It could be for a particular cause. So how you prepare and pitch your interview and why you need a segment proposal are the following reasons. Number one, the topic. As I said, what you think is just critical is maybe not of interest at all. So you have to match what your topic is to the show that you are doing, because you've got to make sure that that's what they talk about. Then the station, do they accept you? And your show audience. And I'll give you a couple examples. Number one, I was interviewed to do 13 different segments on various TV networks, TV shows. I was accepted for 11 of the 13. One of the 13 said, you are not my demographic. My particular segment was for the over 50 crowd. And she said to me, my station is for a younger crowd, a younger generation. So you would not fit. So that's number one. The other one, and I just thought this was a hoot, but you're going to get this kind of thing. She said, well, I would just be really embarrassed to present this to my boss. And I said, what do you mean? She said, spunky old broad, SOB. Why, we couldn't do that at all. And I thought that was kind of interesting because it was a Fox network, and Fox is usually pretty liberal, but in this particular town, they weren't. And so I was one of those risque people as an SOB. So they did not use me, but I was perfect for others. I will tell you something else. I was in a particular area giving a speech, and I went back to my room. It was early. I had like a 7:30 program. And I turned on the TV, and I was watching a local show, and I thought I would be perfect for this. And so I waited till the show ended, and I called them. I called them right then and there, and I asked for the producer, because that's who does the booking. It's the producer. And so I gave my little pitch, and believe it or not, they booked me right then and there, because I knew what I was talking about. I sounded professional. And the interesting thing was, when I said to the producer, what's call time? He said, call time? I said, yeah, call time. What's call time? He said, I know you're a pro. And I said, what do you mean? He said, nobody has ever asked me what a call time is. And the call time is the time they want you in the studio in the green room, which is not really green, but they call it the green room, so that they know you're there and ready to go. So when we talk about topic, your topic has to be really appropriate for what that particular station caters to, whether it's radio or television. And then you have to know what their audience demographic is. And then, of course...
Let me interrupt you for a minute.
Sure.
Can you just tell us, give us a definition of the term segment proposal so we know?
Sure. A segment proposal. Well, for instance, anybody who watches, let's say, Good Morning America, the Today Show, or CBS This Morning, they do these little 3 to 5 minute segments. They do little pieces from one to the other, not the news, but the little things that they bring on as public interest. Those are segments. And every one of those segments has a producer. Now, some of them may be the same producer, but many of them have separate producers. So you may have 10 different producers working on things for that particular show. If it's an hour show, 2-hour show, depending on how it is. But that's what a segment is. A segment proposal is, what am I going to say in that 3 minutes or 5 minutes, or however much you have. Normally it is 1.5 to 3 minutes, believe it or not. Or sometimes it's 3 to 5 minutes, but 3 minutes is normal. And what is it that you're going to present, and how are you going to present it? And I'm going to explain a segment proposal a little bit later on so that you'll get an idea of it. But that's what a segment proposal is. Does that help?
Great, thank you. Okay.
And then, of course, that segment proposal has to have a hook. So, for example, my hook for a particular segment I did, and I've done many others, but I'll give you this, was the 3 worst mistakes to make when starting a second career. So that was my hook. And then, of course, I had to give facts that backed it up. So I went to I did a lot of, well, not a lot of research, but I did research and found that, for example, the over 50 population is now called the new unemployables. So those are the things that you put into your proposal. And that hook was the 3 worst mistakes not to make, or the 3 worst mistakes you make when starting a second career. So that was the hook. Now, easily understood topics. You don't want to really get too technical, and you never really want to use jargon, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later, but you don't want to, you may understand all these words, but nobody else understands them. So that's why when you see these doctors, for example, come on these shows to give their opinions, they do it in really simple language. And even though they may mention the drug or they may mention the procedural, they'll say what this really means is, and then they'll give you a down-to-earth explanation. So it's got to be easily understood, or people are going to be going in circles with their head. Now, this other word, persistence, is so important. I don't care, of course, whatever you do, this is important. That's one of my mottos is discipline and persistence. Discipline and persistence equals success. Persistence means just because you think you're terrific doesn't mean anybody else does. So you may have to email 5, 6, 7 times to the producer. You may have to call 6, 7, 8 times. You might leave voicemails, which are never returned. You have to go at this like it's a real business and a real science. So just don't get discouraged. I mean, I've called some people 8, 9, 10 times before I ever get on the show. Other times, like I told you, I called up the station, talked to the producer, and got on right away. And of course, they've had me back too. So the point is, persistence is important. Don't think it's magic. Now, even with my radio show, I've got to tell you something. I give people plenty of time. My next time when I do recording, I do everything through Skype, audio Skype, and then it's produced for the next month. And I give people at least 2 to 3 weeks to send me their information. And I need you to know that 3 or 4 days before the show is actually on, and I, of course, have to write up all this. I have to write this up so we can promote the shows. I have to get it to my producer so they can get it on the station's paraphernalia. You know, they promote it as well. And he has to make all these Skype connections. So I need this at least 4 days before, and people still can't get it to me. Yet, there are other people who I book who are real pros, and I'll say, this is what I need, and I get it within 48 hours. Why? Because they've got it all prepared. I ask people to send me 10 questions that that they'd like me to ask them. I may follow it, I may not, but the pros already have those questions written because this is not their first game. They are pros. They are on many shows, and they just have these questions ready. So persistence is important, the hook is important, and easily understood topics. Now, when you prepare and pitch your interview, your topic should be associated with any one or all of these 3 things. Number 1, local interest stories. So if I'm doing a segment in Austin, Texas, for example, by the way, when you do a show in Austin, Texas, and you're not from Austin, Texas, you pay your own way. You have to pay airfare, or I don't know how else you're going to get there unless you're driving somewhere. You're paying in a hotel. You're paying for your meals, and then guess what? If there's a tragedy, which you see happening just about every day, if there's a tragedy, you don't get on. You don't get on. They will bump you, and it's either you stay an extra day, or if they have the whole day slotted the next day, you may have to fly back another time. But you try it to local interest stories. So if you're talking about, let's say, some health issue, and it's got a local interest story that's been in the newspaper, and you see that, that's what you tie it to. And you can find those articles online from the local newspaper, or even if you get it that night before or in the morning, you get the paper and tie it in so it's very, very recent and very apropos. Or it could be current events, like we're coming up to the holidays. So it could be any one of Kwanzaa, Christmas, Hanukkah, any of those things. But you can tie various events to the calendar and talk about those particular things. The greatest thing is if you can tie in celebrities. Now you can see, maybe just faintly, you can see Suzanne Summers on the left. This is when she was on Dancing with the Stars. So I used her as an example of another career by being on Dancing with the Stars. You see Henry Winkler, and I talk about him starting a second career as the author of children's books. And the particular reason it was interesting for him was because he was diagnosed as unable to read as a kid. So he was dyslexic. And so for him to be an author of children's books and really successful children's books is amazing. And then you have Betty White. We all love and know Betty White. And Betty really did not become famous until she was over 50. It's when she was the happy homemaker on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and she was 50 at that time. And so you think about that, and that was like 45 years ago, and that's when she became famous. So if you can prepare and pitch your interview and associate your topic with any of these three areas, it has a much greater chance of you becoming, a very good guest. So that's why we talk about those particular things. Now, when we talk about pitching your interview and preparing for it, there is no substitute. I mean, except for rehearse. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. And you have your main topic points down cold. I want you to know that I had my 3 worst mistake points down cold. And that's the thing. The host may say something to you like, well, you know, Gayle, it is really hard to be turning 50 and it's a challenge for a lot of people. And you come back with, and that's why you take a look at someone like Suzanne Summers and you go right into your pitch and you don't get sidetracked by anything that they say. Or I might have said something like, because I did it differently every time. I must have done this on 10 or 12 stations. And then one time I said, yes, and according to the latest statistics, the people over 50 are considered the new unemployable. And then I went into certain percentages and things like that. So you cannot get sidetracked by the anchor or the host. And they don't mean to do it. It's just they're doing their thing and you have to be able to deal with it. So no matter what they say to you, you have to have your main topic points down cold. Because if you don't, they're going to throw you off and you are never going to get to say what you want to say. Now, meanwhile, underneath, you being on there, they're showing your website. Sometimes they'll show your phone number, but not always. But they will show your website. And, sometimes they'll give other information as to how to contact you. But you are not pitching. You are not selling. You cannot say, for example, there are a lot of people that will go on and say, well, on page 33 of my book. No. You say, I cover in my book this exact thing. And what I say is, and you tell them what you say, because that will make them want to buy your book more than, well, it's on page 63. So have your main topic points down cold. Don't let anybody get you away from this. And practice your sound bites out loud. Now, we just went through this presidential election, and you can see how sound bites have just been taken out of context. You've got to be careful for every word you say, because they're going to find your 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 words that they take out, and they're going to repeat them in some way, shape, or form. Now, some do it better than others. Some don't do it at all. But you better have your sound bites ready. So
Gayle, tell us what you mean by sound bites.
Well, a sound bite is something that's maybe 10, 12 seconds at the most. And it's, again, 5 or 10 words at the most. So, for example, if I said something like, well, I think all women should wear high heels, which I don't really believe because I don't wear them anymore. But someone could take that out and say, Dr. Gayle Carson states that all women should wear high heels. Well, you know, some people could get angry at that. People who are disabled might get angry at that. If I said a sound bite like, everyone should be able to do exercise. Well, what I might have said really was everyone should be able to do some form of exercise. Even if you're chair bound, there are parts of your body that you can exercise. So, and I might go on and on, but they might say something, take out, everybody should be able to exercise. Well, again, the disabled person is going to get very offended at that. So it's, that's what I mean by a soundbite. They'll grab onto something that you say, 5, 6, 7, 8 words, take it out of context. And you've seen this hundreds of times where people will get on air and say, well, it was totally taken out of context. That's not what I said. So that's what we mean by a soundbite. And then, of course, habitual smiling. Now, I am known for my smile. I am always smiling. I guess even when bad things happen, I guess I must have a little bit of a smile on my face. But in reality, you have to smile because you think you're smiling. I can tell you you're not. And so you have to just be very conscious to always have that smile on your face. And even when you're doing radio, have that smile on your face because it comes through in your voice. I mean, there are people who talk like this, and I just have to pull things out of them. And then other people who are very bouncy, happy, you know, they'll tell you various things. Now, even if you're talking about a difficult subject, you still have to have animation in your voice, and you still have to be smiling. So you have to practice that habitual smiling. And so just walk around, and every time you pass a mirror, look at yourself and see if you are smiling. Now,
Gayle, that's a good point too, because especially for audio, people can really hear whether you're smiling or not.
absolutely, absolutely, Jeanette. I mean, people think that they're smiling, and they think that they're, you know, doing all these wonderful things. And then if they ever watch themselves in a video, or, you know, if they're getting filmed for something, they'll say, oh my gosh, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. Did I really do that? So it's true. So make sure that you are smiling so that you can definitely give that great feeling. And that's what's really going to get you to ask back. And I know many of my colleagues have been asked back for these kinds of things because they're constantly coming up with new information, and they're good on camera. And one of the ways that you can be good on camera is your appearance. Now, I know that many of you may not like to hear this, but you don't always go in front of someone looking your best. Now, I can tell you at this speech I went to this morning, now this wasn't on TV or radio, but this was a speech I went to, and the photograph of the person, oh God, was outstanding. I thought, what a good looking woman. And she didn't have a stitch of makeup on when she was speaking. She's tiny, so she kind of faded into the background. And that was something when I'm on stage, I have to pay attention to because I'm only 5'1½". So I have to make sure I can be seen. And I also have to make sure that I wear bright colors on stage. Now, I want you to wear them on TV as well, because that will really make you stand out. But on stage, even, it's important because if you're on stage, many times if you've got curtains behind you, they're beige, or they're a dark purple, or they're a horrible green, or something like that. You've got to stand out. And the only way you're going to stand out is by bright colors. So we want to make sure that you're wearing maybe a hot aqua, or a hot pink, or a bright orange or yellow, or a royal blue, or something like that, but bright colors. Now, you can have a darker suit, but your blouse underneath or your shirt underneath should be a bright color. That's basically it. And if you are a technical person, let's say you're a doctor and you want to get your message out on TV, wearing a lab coat is very appropriate. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. A lab coat with a stethoscope around you makes you very authentic. So if you have a particular uniform that you wear in what you do and in what your expertise is, it's sure okay to wear it on camera. For example, if you're a plumber, you can wear your plumbing outfit, you know, as long as it's clean and not dirty, with your insignia over your heart. You know how they have a particular insignia of the company. That's fine. But if you are let's say a regular person like me, I'm going to wear a bright color. And then, of course, makeup. And I wear theatrical makeup on television. I buy it in a place that sells theatrical makeup, stage makeup, TV makeup, and I wear that on camera, because every horrible thing about you will come out or fade away and you won't even be seen. So you make sure that your makeup is good. And if you don't know how to do it, go to someone who can train you to do it. I mean, it's not a hard thing to do. I used to have modeling schools and I taught makeup. I had my own line of makeup, so I've made up people all my life. So just make sure that you know what you're doing. And also, I think this is really important. Make sure your hair is good, not all over the place. I mean, certain celebrities can get away with particularly crazy looks, but if you are imparting a serious message, you want to look the part. Now, if you want to be Miss or Mr. Kooky and you want to have that image out there, then that's what you dress like. But I just want to make sure that you always look your best, and that you know you have to wear bright colors, and you make sure that you have makeup on. Now,
well, and Gayle, even for posing for our photos for online, I know a lot of women who will go and have their makeup done, some of them, and certainly have their hair done. So, you know, that's certainly even more appropriate if you're going to be on a stage or on TV.
absolutely. Now, I will say with radio, unless you're going to the station, of course. But today, I want to tell you, this summer, I've always gone to the fitness convention. I'm a big fitness person. And so I decided this year that I was going to do my broadcast. I wasn't going to take classes. I was going to go and do my broadcast from the fitness convention, the IDEA Fitness Convention. So I expected my producer to go with me, and he couldn't go for a number of reasons. So I thought, how can I do this? What am I going to do? You know, I usually have this equipment with me and it looks so professional. And here, what am I going to do? So he told me to get an iPhone 6, which I did. And then I got an iRig mic, and we called in. He called me from his studio, the producer. He called me from his studio. I put it on speaker. I had the interviewee on one side of the phone and me on the other side. And I had this little tiny, it couldn't be more than an inch by an inch, mic plugged into the top of the phone. And that's how we did the interviews. And it came out fabulous. So all I need now to do an interview anywhere I go is my iPhone and this little tiny 1-inch little microphone, which is bizarre, but that's that's the way it is now. So even with radio, when you do radio and you don't have to be there, that's what I'm trying to get across, is you don't actually have to be in a studio anymore. You can be in your pajamas, it doesn't matter. But if you are going into an actual radio studio, then you want to look the part as well. And everybody that I interviewed at the fitness convention came in their workout clothes because they were teaching classes. And I had the best. I had Louis Van Amstel from, remember him from Dancing with the Stars. And I had and Elaine Lelaine, who was Jack LaLanne's widow. She's 90 years old and she's still doing push-ups. She's fabulous. So, I mean, you just have all these opportunities, and what you look like, and if you're professional, it makes a difference. So what don't you do and what do you do during your interview? Number one, you do get your message out. Do not get sidetracked. And you'll notice I'm looking directly at the host. You always look at the host, not the camera. If you look at the camera, the audience believes that you are trying to sell something. When you look at the host, you are very sincere, and the camera will capture you. The camera will capture you. So it's just, remember that. Sometimes you just want to look at that camera. You want to know where it is. And interestingly, too, many studios now do not have people on their cameras. They're automatic. They're controlled by computer, by one person somewhere else, and they are taking direction, from the producer, but they're nowhere near you, and the camera is just moving around all by itself. So you can get very distracted. So look at the host. Also, don't use any jargon. We talked about that before. Again, no big words, no areas where people could say, what is she talking about? What does he mean? And never say no comment. They will say, when you say no comment, that says to them guilty. So just be very conscious of that, because you want to make sure that people don't get the wrong impression here. So never say no comment. You can say, I really don't have an answer for that. However, I will find out and I will get back to you, and you can tell your audience as soon as I give you that information. Or you can say, I will find out, and I'll tell you what, if you have me back, I will give you that answer and tell your audience at the same time. But don't ever say no comment. And then, of course, do use those sound bites. That's so important. So very important, the sound bites. Now, body language. Here you are being viewed all the time. I want you to start watching talk shows, and I want you to start watching people and their body language, because you're going to learn a lot just by observing. And it is so important to have good body language, because according to all the information and statistics that are out there, that body language says far more than what you're actually saying. So first of all, it's erect posture. That is so important in terms of how you look. So whether you're standing, now I'm seated here, and I will say, I'm trying to think back now, in the majority of interviews that I've been doing, I've been seated. Now, sometimes I'm seated like this at a couch, a sofa. Sometimes I am seated behind a desk with the hosts. It's been a variety. But one time I was actually standing up at a table. And again, remember I told you I'm only 5'1.5". Luckily, the host was also tiny. And she said, in fact, she hugged me. She said, it's so nice to do an interview with someone who's my size and not towering over me. So we had a nice little bond there. But erect posture, you've got to look, as not like you're slumping over or so forth. And natural gestures, not, oh dear, and no fig leaf positions, with your hands, and no hands in back. I mean, use your hands. And you have to, by the way, really emphasize your hands when you're on TV, because the little gestures just look like your hands are little, growing out of your side. So you really want to embrace gestures. And you'll notice that my hands are on my knees here, and that's okay, because they're not tucked away. They're really right out there. And I have a sizzle reel that I use when I give speeches or when someone introduces me or something. And you will see in my sizzle reel, I use a lot of hands. And I also use props. Now let's go back to my 3 worst mistakes. Not 3 worst mistakes that you're making when trying to have a second career. Number 1, I used a flip phone. And I think it's funny because Apple's talking about going back to a flip phone. But I talk about it in terms of technology, and that the over 50 person is sometimes scared of technology and what they're going to have to do. Now, I can tell you, I am a technophobe. I know nothing about technology, but I do what I have to do to learn what I have to learn. I don't need to know all the ins and outs of computing and so forth, but I know enough. I know enough to push the buttons to get these slides to move. So number one was the phone that I used. Then I had one of those hourglasses where the sand flows. And I said, it's not over, because a lot of people think they're too old. When they reach 50 or 60, they know that they can, people can get hired for less money, that they can, people don't want to take a chance on insurance for them and all the benefits and so forth. So I said, until the hands of time run out, you are qualified to get a job. Do never think you are too old. What you can bring in experience is far worth more than what your age is. So that was the second thing I used. And then the third thing I used was a trophy. And I said, think back to when you were in school, whether it's grammar school, high school, whatever, and you won an award. You won an award because you did a good job. Don't think that you cannot do a good job now. And I go into, so I used a trophy, I used an hourglass, and I used a flip phone. And those are the three props that I use. Now, I use other props for other segments, but since I'm telling you about this segment, I'm sticking with that. But use props. You can bring a pet with you. I mean, pets are always wonderful. It's got to make sense with what you're talking about. But if I were talking about, let's say, healthcare, we know that pet therapy is very important for people. It could be if you're doing a cause like the Humane Society, you know, you'd bring pets with you. But pets are always good. And so, and they're pretty good. I mean, they're pretty well behaved when they go on TV. So, that's one thing that you can do, but have props that make sense and that you can demonstrate easily. So that's something else that you need to think about and look at.
Also, Gayle, another thing I wanted to interject there, as far as gestures go, again, when you're rehearsing your sound bites, you should probably be rehearsing gestures too. I know when I was going to be on stage for something a while back, I practiced in the mirror my gestures, and the funny part was that it didn't look like much until I really exaggerated them, and then they look normal.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so weird because it feels like I'm exaggerating it so much it's going to look ridiculous, but in the mirror it looked just natural.
Well, that's what I was saying before. When you look at yourself, that's why I said when you do use your hands, make sure you do exaggerate, because what you think you're doing, just like when you think you're smiling and you're not really smiling. So all of that, has a part to play in it. You're absolutely correct. And it sounds like a lot, Jeanette. I mean, I've talked about a lot of things for a 3-minute spot. But all of those things come into play. Now, once you do it a few hundred times, it's very natural, and you're doing it a few hundred times. When you practice, you're practicing it at home. Now, when you're in the studio, yeah, there are other people around, and yeah, there are distractions. And that reminds me, I wanted to talk about this for a minute. There was one station that said, well, I don't want any of these segments. I want something active. I want something, fun. I want something that moves around. Well, I don't know, what did I do? So since I work out so much, I said, well, what about an exercise segment for seniors? And she said, would you exercise on camera? I said, of course. So, and this was quite funny because I had 2 appearances that day at 2 different stations in the same city. So I did my first one and I was all dressed up, blah, 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 blah. Then I went to this other station and I had to get into my workout clothes. So I had them in the car, my rental car, got into the ladies' room there, changed into my workout clothes. And we did a segment. The host, again, worked out with me. She had on her workout clothes. and we did a workout thing together. Nothing really difficult. I still had my same 3 minutes, but I did, for instance, how you can use soup cans or water bottles if you don't have weights to do biceps or triceps. And I showed how to do that. And we took water bottles from the station and used those. And then I showed how you can sit in a chair and lift your leg and extend your leg and put the leg down. So there was the leg work that's being done. So in other words, I used, and then I had a rubber band with me. And so I showed how you could use the rubber band by stretching it out to the side. So you would do chest flies doing this. So you exercise the chest. So I showed chest, I showed bicep, tricep, and I showed quadricep and hamstring by doing the exercise in the chair. So there was I came up with that on the fly because she was nixing everything that I was suggesting. I want movement. So I thought, what could be more moving than exercise? So that's exactly what I did. So sometimes you just have to, create something on the fly, which is what I did. So when we look at wrapping all of this up, and I'm hoping that maybe there'll be some more questions, or some of you have something that you've sent in to Jeanette. You can just massively broaden your exposure through TV, radio, and podcast interviews. Somebody somewhere is going to hear you and get in touch with you, either to buy your book, to have you give a speech, to have you come as a spokesperson. There's just a lot of things that can happen from this. So I even got a call the other day from someone who wants me on an advisory board. I don't know if I'm going to do it or not, but it's just something that happened because of all my media exposure. So again, you've got to be well prepared with an interesting, timely topic. So if you were doing something for Christmas, let's say, come January 1st, it's done. It's over. If you have something for Valentine's Day is over. It's done. So if you want this, and if you want to, and if you've got a good relationship with a station, and they like you, if you can come up with something, for example, let's just say you are what I am not, and that's a good cook or a baker, you could have different dishes for Christmas, for Valentine's Day, for Mother's Day, for whatever. And you can constantly be asked back to show these particular dishes. Or let's say you're someone who creates some kind of art or arts and crafts. You could have various designs or creations for these various events. So that's what you need. For example, in October, I can talk about breast cancer. I'm a 3-time breast cancer survivor. So I talk about that. I talk about my 16 surgeries. I talk about, and here I am. I'm active. I'm doing all these things. Come February, that's Spunky Old Broad Month. So I talk about all the things that SOBs across the country are doing. So there's lots of different ways that you can get on the air, but it needs to be associated with what the station stands for. And let's face it, there are more conservative stations. There are more liberal stations. There are stations who cater to a particular demographic and what the audience interests are. And it has to be well rehearsed. I just cannot say that often enough. I mean, it really does need to be. And you can have a great interview by looking your best, looking at the host, avoiding jargon, using sound bites, and smiling. Those things really make the difference. And I would suggest, and so easy for you to do today with smartphones, all you have to do is set it up on a little tripod and get in front of it and do your little 3 minutes in front of it and see what you look like, see what you sound like. Even do it so that you can see your hands, and if you're standing, what you look like. Great rehearsal today's that you can do. You can do it so easily today, which you couldn't do years ago. So that's all a part of it. So we have a free gift for you. I know Jeanette always asks for something that you can get for free. So I have a free gift for you, which you can get by going to www.sob6tips.com. and there are 6 tips I give you there, 6 secrets you should know for your TV or radio interview. So if you're listening to this and you want to get some tips, they're good, and it'll give you a way to connect with me and see whether, this is something that you'd like to do. So that's kind of basically what I have to say, Jeanette. Do you have any questions that have come in, or questions that you want to ask me that have come up in what we've talked about?
Yeah, well, I wanted to make a couple comments. One thing that I wanted to say is that now we've been talking all about radio and TV appearances, but really everything that you've told us can also be applied to any sort of speaking gig in a more general sense.
Absolutely. I have to tell you this story. It's not a pleasant story, but I must tell it to you. I am a big proponent for businesses to get their 3 minutes ready, because something's going to happen in their town, or something's going to happen where they will say, I can talk about that, and they better be ready. And this fellow that was at my table, this was a board meeting I was at, had a very unfortunate incident in one of his franchises. And someone was, the owner of the franchise literally shot an employee and then killed himself. Well, you can imagine. I mean, wow, the trauma, the police, the publicity, the TV. And he said to me, Gayle, he said, I have just, for these past few weeks have been unbelievable. And I said to him, that's exactly, because he knows that I do this kind of training. And I said, this is exactly why I said to you, it's so important to be ready for anything that happens. Because if you are in any kind of business, let's say it's solar, because solar is big now, or let's say it's purified water, or it's tainted water, or it's environmental, or anything like that, and you are a part of that industry, you can be asked to go on TV and make some comments. And if you aren't asked, you should call that station and say, listen, this is who I am, and I have something really important to say, and have your 3 points ready so that, you're going to interest them. I can show you why, number one, solar will save you X number of dollars. I can show you why, blah, 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 blah. Have your 3 points ready. But there is a perfect example, Jeanette, exactly what you said. This helps whether you're doing a speech on stage, whether you are in business and you just need to, you're called upon to say something on media. Everybody will do a better job if they follow this structure. Absolutely.
Great. Yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that this is a lot of information, and it's been very helpful, Gayle, but also I can see where if people really want to pursue some media exposure, that it would be very helpful to have someone like you helping them with the finer details of this, and really helping them get their talk down and, perfect the whole process. Right?
Well, it's true, and there's a couple of ways they can do that, Jeanette. If they want to just do a 2-hour video, I have a really good 2-hour video that they can buy for $97, very inexpensive. And it will give them the basics. It will show them and tell them. And we go into a little more on, how to write a book, how to do a press release. Of course, we go into a lot more on radio and television as well. But it's $97. It's very, very easy to deal with. However, your audience are life coaches. So if they want to hire me as a coach, or if they want to hire me as a person where they come in for a VIP day, and boy, I just give it to them. I can get anybody ready in a day and a half if I concentrate only on them. They can do that too. But if they want to start off with something light and easy, the $97 2-hour video is well worth it.
Great. So you have a lot of resources, and thank you for your gift. Do you want to go back to that slide with the link for the gift? Just one more time?
Oh, yeah, wait a minute. Hold. No, I did something wrong here. This is my non-technology. Hold on. Let's see. I don't know if I can go back. Let's see if I can. I don't think I can.
Go to slide. Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. I can just go down here, all the way down to the bottom.
Yeah.
Hold on. See, folks, I wasn't kidding when I said that I'm not technology centered. Okay, there we go. www.sobradiotipssob6tips, sob6tips, and it's the number 6, as you can see, .com.
Great. Okay, well, do we have any questions? You can either type them in the chat or type in the chat that you have a question, and I'll unmute you. And we'll just see if we have any questions.
It's someone that I met at a mastermind a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've talked to her. And I've seen some of her shows that she's done before, and basically it's an hour, and it looks like you just chat and kind of talk about what I do and how I do it, and I might do a little demonstration.
Okay. Now, if you're going to be on for the full hour, are you going to be on for the full hour?
Yes.
You know, you really have to have many talking points. So I'm not sure exactly what you're going to talk about, but I would certainly have props there. I would certainly have case studies of people that you worked with demonstrating some of the points. Just like I gave some stories today, you don't have to, you can keep the names of the guilty, you can say Jane Doe, John Doe, doesn't matter. But the point is case studies, props, maybe a celebrity that you could tie this in with, a local interest story you could tie it in with, whatever you're going to talk about, I don't know. So
what are you going to talk about, Terry?
I'm going to talk about, I do energetic work. And so I'm going to talk about the energy work that I do and talk about not so much the techniques or what it's about. I kind of want to keep it pretty mainstream and high level, but the kinds of things about working with overwhelm and stress and chaos and bringing people to a place of peace and calm. And when I've talked to the person who's hosting the show, she says she's going to ask me a lot about my story, about how I got into this type of work, and a lot about the success stories that I've had, the types, what types of clients I've worked with, the results that they've gotten. And then she's going to have me do a little bit of a demonstration.
Yeah, that's where you're going to really get the audience, is with the demonstration. And
this is on TV?
Yes.
Now, with this audience, would they be everyday people, or are these energy workers and healers?
No, I think they're everyday people.
Okay, so definitely keep away from the jargon.
Yeah.
And because there are people who are fascinated by this, but also think it's a bunch of hooey. So you want to have some facts and some data. And then, very important because of that, you want to have case studies where something really worked and the difference it made in that person's life. Because, people always have this dream and this belief that if it worked for someone else, it might work for them. So definitely some demonstrations, some case studies, absolutely.
Yeah, because the demo may also give the audience some experience of it too.
Right. I'm thinking of just doing a group demonstration where I can do a group of everybody who's there or who's going to be watching the recording would also get the energy. So I think that would be really good for them to have an experience of it.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it, really.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Oh, well, good job for getting that gig.
And good luck, Terry. Let's hear what happens with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Terry knows how to get a hold of me, so let me know.
I will. This was so timely for me. I was like, oh, yeah, let me hop out of here.
Fantastic. That's great.
Yeah.
Not. So it sounds like everything was perfectly clear, and everyone listening can go out and start talking on radio and TV.
Yeah, I don't know. If anybody wants to reach me, by email or anything, Jeanette, get in touch with Jeanette. She'll give you my email. But
go to your last slide, because that's on the slide too.
Oh yeah, hold on. I can do this now. Oh, maybe I can. Hold on. I've got to go back and do it. There I go. there's my email, my phone number if you want to get in touch with me. But yeah, take advantage, because I know some of you out there who are life coaches. I mean, it's going to differentiate you. You know, everybody who is a coach and is a life coach needs to find something that differentiates them. Because if I lined up 10 of you out there who are life coaches, what could you say to me that would differentiate you to me if I wanted to hire you? And that's key. And when I can say that I've been quoted in the Wall Street Journal, when I can say I've been on ABC, CBS, whatever, when I can say they quoted me in the Reader's Digest. I mean, these are credible publications and credible sources. That sets me apart, not from everybody, but from a great majority of people. So you need to look at this in the same way. How can getting your message out there on radio, in a book, through a press release, on television, separate you and bring you business? That's what this is all about, bringing you business. And that's the best way to do it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Gayle, for all this information and sharing your expertise with us today. I know we all really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, Jeanette. It's a wonderful opportunity, and I really do this because I believe in it, and I'm absolutely passionate about it. So, so hopefully we can get some of your people to, you know, say, hey, this is the path for me. So I look forward to it.
Great. Thanks again, and thank you everyone for attending.